What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journos Comics and Pop Culture. It's Thursday, and this is Thursday Night Live. I'm just coming at you guys randomly throughout the week. We did a Monday Night Live, a Sunday Night Live. Whenever we go live, guys. Appreciate everyone that is here right now. Um, big shout out to anybody who caught my little live that I just did on Instagram. It's hilarious because I already got comments. The first appearance of Journo's hair. So, guys, no, if you missed that one, you missed it. I mean, you could go catch it on the replay. The hair's tucked under the hat as usual right now. But yes, Journo's hair made an official appearance on the IG. And I'm already getting comments. Oh, wow, you have hair. Oh, it's hilarious. All right, so we got an awesome show tonight, guys. We're going to talk about, I know these things. I know what's going to save comics. Yeah, this is going to be fun. I've hinted at this over the last few weeks. We got some Q&A to get to for my Patreon subscribers. We got Q&A from the months of May and June. So we're going to do that as well. And I'm going to intro this on showing you guys something really, really cool that has to do with, speaking of Tony T, president of EGS. Big congrats to Tony for what I'm going to show you guys here in a moment. I want to say what's up to everyone that's hanging out, man. Dale stopped in. Appreciate you stopping in, Dale. Gary's here. Nice, Gary. Yeah, show it off, man. That's awesome. Thank you so much for purchasing some merch. Goonish, Raising Elm, Apple, man. Yeah, thank you for being here, man. Brandon, what's going on, Brandon? Brandon, Ken, what's up, Ken? 360. I know that the hat is back. The hat is back. I'm sorry, guys. It's I'm gonna start charging. I'm gonna start charging to show the hair. anyways, I'm just being funny, guys. I'm glad so many people were excited though about seeing the hair for the first time. GT Key, what's going on? Man, okay, so first up, let's see. Standard little updates for the channel, man. Again, coming back strong this last month or so, fighting the algorithms. Appreciate you all being here, watching the videos. Every little thing helps right now. When you go away from YouTube for a minute and you try to come back, the algorithms want to dookie on you. All right. So anytime you guys click the like button when watching the video, anytime you guys comment, it helps the algorithms. Sharing the videos, it helps the algorithms. So always appreciate your guys' small support and just doing those small little things. What else we got going on? I mean, because I'm pumping out videos left and right again, like I always like to do. I do have an investment video coming, even though I've been kind of staying away from that as of late. I think you guys are going to like this one that I am doing. Hopefully that should be out by next week. We got Comic Book Canon this Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Awesome. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have an awesome announcement this Sunday. So stay tuned for that. If you guys aren't subscribed to Comic Book Canon yet, link is down below. Again, I do want to let you guys know too, if you are into framing up your comic books and you haven't checked out craftycomics.com, that's crafty with an I, check them out. They have some of the most, if not the most beautiful frames for your comic books that I've seen. They frame your standard raw comics. They frame magazines. They frame slabs too. So if you have a CGC slab, if you have an EGS slab, imagine an EGS slab. And I have one. It's just, you guys might know, my son won't let me take it off of his wall. It is an EGS Miles Morales. It's a homage variant. It's a UF4 homage. And a 9.8 with that EGS custom label. And it's in a Crafty Comics frame. And it looks absolutely amazing hanging on his wall. Check them out. We are running the discount code right now, JFAN10, to get 10% off of your order. I am going to drop their website in the comments, www.craftywithanI.comics.com. Use code JFAN10 for 10% off, guys. And remember, you guys can always check out EGS's link in the description below for EGS Graded Comics, guys. If you haven't checked them out yet, and you guys can use the code Cannon5 to save 5% off of your EGS orders. 13,000 subscriber contest giveaway coming up soon. I'll probably have an announcement next week for when that's going to happen. It's going to be on a live stream, most likely. So far, I got this near mint copy of Spawn number 9, first appearance of Angela to give away, and a nice reprint of Amazing Spider-Man 122, The Death of Green Goblin. I'm going to get a few more books to bundle up there for my 13,000 subscriber contest giveaway real soon here. Serge, what is going on, man? Isaac's here. I always like to tell this story when Isaac shows up. Isaac was in the first ever live stream I ever did. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't even remember what I was talking about, but Isaac was there, and Isaac's been, riding with me ever since. Appreciate you, Isaac. Serge, you've been around for a long time, too. All you guys are awesome, man. I love you guys. Nowhere Bound, what's going on? This is not a slide. It's a Crafty Comics frame, but it's clean. It is clean. Is that what you're talking about? I think that's what you're talking about. I got another Chadwick back there as well. That's the black and white variant. Anyways, so I want to show off before we get into the topic of discussion tonight. I got to show this off. I'm going to bring something up on screen. So EGS Comics, in my humble opinion, has defied all odds. EGS Comics started off as wanting to bring a couple of things to the table: transparent grading and customization of your aesthetics of your slab comic books. And by doing this, basically starting from nothing, they started the company using comic skins. For those that don't know what comic skins are basically a do-it-yourself slab that you can purchase to put together a type of slab yourself, your comic in a slab. But what EGS did was they really kind of revolutionized how to even use these slabs, and that's what a lot of people didn't understand. They took these comic skins and customized them in a way to where they were still very unique to EGS. They were tamper-proof, and they hit the ground running. And they had a lot of hate, but they also had a lot of support. And they did this for a few years up until recently, towards the end of last year. They got their Gen 1 proprietary cases. I don't have one. I should have one here to show you guys. Do I? No, I don't have one in reaching distance. And I don't think that all the haters never thought that EGS would ever get to this position. I did a review, an honest review. I think their cases are right on par with the big two. I actually, you could weigh them together. You guys could watch the review. There's some things that I like better about the EGS case than I did CBCS and CGCs. For a Gen 1 case, they're better than Gen 2 or 3 of CBC and CGCs. I mean, they are really out the gate running with this stuff. And I want to share this news today because they are continuing to make progress and headway in this community as being a reputable comic book grading and slabbing service. We're going to bring this up on screen. Nicholas, what's going on? All right, so what you guys see here is cover price. For those that don't know, I am a paying member of Cover Price, but I don't pay for the I use CLZ to document and store my collection. Cover Price offers the same thing, and quite honestly, guys, if I didn't start with CLZ, I have almost 25,000 books in my CLZ app. If I didn't start with CLZ and I had to start right now, I would start with Cover Price. I would absolutely use Cover Price as my go-to for storing my comic book collection digitally. But for those that have and use Cover Price, I'm going to show you guys this. Now, when adding comic books, let's see, because with my account, I can add a few. Oh, here we go. Add a comic. Okay. Watch what you can do now. We're going to add a comic. Let's just say, well, what is an EGS book that I have? I have an EGS. I have a Wonder Woman Black and Gold #1, I think. That's in an EGS slab. Search. Come on. Let's see what we got. I don't know why the search engine isn't working here. Come on, cover price. Don't do this to me. Why we're live. Come on. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to come out of here. Wow, what is going on? Here we go. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, here we go. Wonder Woman Black and Gold #1. Man. I'm telling you, it never does this. All right, this is what we're going to do. Oh, here we go. Finally. But what is this? Here we go. Wonder Woman. It didn't even bring up the right. I know. I'm hyping up cover price right now, but it's just. Maybe it's my internet. I'm going to blame it on my internet. All right. We're just going to play around here. Let's go to. That book's not out. We're going to go to this book, Wonder Woman issue #2. We're going to add it to my collection. Right? Watch this. Boom! EGS. Look at that. We can hit EGS. Say I have this book graded by EGS, and it's an EGS 9.8. There is quantity 1. I can now add that book in my collection. I think that is freaking awesome. And it's the little things in life, but it matters for those that store art collections digitally. All of those details matter. And if you guys have EGS slabs in your collection, that matters greatly. So I want to give a big shout out to Tony and EGS for, continuing to get out there and be a staple of a company in this community. And again, it's not, it ain't no competition here. EGS is EGS, and they're doing what they need to do, right? All right, Peter, what's going on? Sean's here. What's going on, Sean? Oh, is that what's going on, Sean? Yeah, a little slow. For sure. Okay, guys, let's do this. Let's get into this topic of discussion, okay? Whew. Let me get some water. Now, the title. I know it's going to save comic books. This is what I'm talking about, guys. I'm talking about modern primary market. I mean, even secondary market, because once these new books come out, outside of speculating, or if there's a book that has a solid first appearance or stuff, outside of variants, I'm not talking about the variant market, because we know that the variant market is a large portion of the primary market right now. There's a lot of concern in the comic book community about the future of floppy comics in terms of what they're meant to be on a primary market, right? And that is a product that gets people's attention to go and buy them when they come out. Every new comic book down every Wednesday, and we buy them because of the story, the new character that's showing up in it. We want to read about them. We want to read these titles. We're involved in the story. We're involved in the artwork, and this is driving revenue for publishers. A lot of people are concerned that this is really hurting publishers in the market right now. And I'll bring this number up again. that shout out to Comic Tom for bringing this up. You know, a while back in one of my other streams, that a couple months back, when looking at Comicron's numbers, I believe it was the month of May, if I remember correctly, 80% of that primary market from the distributors from Diamond and Penguin was variants. Now, I'm not saying that that inherently isn't a bad thing, because I mean, hey, it's a good thing because people are buying something, right? And these publishers are pushing out product that's being consumed and purchased, but it's variants, right? So much of it is variants. What about buying and reading comic books for that matter? A lot of people are saying that, well, there's no fresh stories these days. And then the characters aren't fresh anymore. There's also a bit of a, how do I say this? It's a conundrum, right? It's a double-edged sword when we talk about, well, what can make new comic books exciting, and we want to talk about new characters. On one hand, we get people that say, you know, oh, we got this new, like, you know, even Miles Morales got it, right? Or right now with Spider-Boy. A few years back, we got, you know, the Hulk with not Immortal Hulk, right? It was the Hulk with the claws, Weapon H. It's like, it seems that all these companies are doing, especially the big two, Marvel and DC, is recycling characters. So there's that argument of, well, Miles Morales is just a recycled Spider-Man, Peter Parker. So-and-so is just a recycled character of this and of that. You know, we got how many Robins in DC? There's how many new Wonder Womans has DC pushed out over the last few years? Let's get fresh characters. Reef, what's going on? But then on the flip side of that, there's people that complain about fresh characters, and that they don't have any. If it's a new character, there's no originality. Nobody is ever happy with how these publishers are creating new characters. I mean, these publishing companies have even gone to try to like retcon, and we're talking over like the last 20 years or so. Remember when they retconned Peter Parker's origin, but then like made us forget about it, that it ever happened? That chapter 1 that came out in, I believe it was 1999. And then they got the bright idea of saying, well, let's not retcon our Peter. Let's create a ultimate universe and actually start a fresh modern story. That worked. Then. But you got Peter Parker right now in the comic books that is so dry. It's not fresh. And everyone I talk to that is a Spider-Man fan, that is still reading Spider-Man comic books, I haven't heard one good thing from anyone. And I'm holding on to it. I'm still reading it. But it's hard. It's hard to get through. I just finished issue 21, so I'm a few issues behind still. Let me see what Reef is saying real quick about like 80. What makes it different in the 80s and 90s? Stories and artwork were well done and struck a chord with readers and fans. Nowadays, it's all about how much books is going to be worth. Miles Morales is good right now. Reef, there's some things that I want to touch on with that. You know what, 360, I actually picked up the second prints because I want to read the hype. I did pick up the second prints of issues 7 and 8 because I want to read the hype. I didn't like spec or FOMO out on the first prints. I really didn't care, but I'm actually intrigued. And I will say, because I haven't read it yet. Yeah, that's when you stop reading ASM at 4:45. Yeah. Circumstances, what's going on, man? I'm still in the 1940 to 1969 back issues. That's dope, Vinny. I hear you. And Isaac, you can't please everyone. That's true. Now, when you look at characters like Miles Morales, Kamala Khan, even Sam Alexander, a new Nova, X-23, a new Wolverine, and you get the people that say these are just carbon copies. Why don't we make something fresh? Right? And then, I mean, who is a fresh character, guys? Who is a fresh character that's came out over the last 10 or 15 years that has completely different powers, that isn't a bite off of another character? Pedro, what's going on? It's been very rare. And if they do, it seems as if they don't last. I mean, we can use the new Warriors as an example, but I won't even get into that because that definitely fell flat on its face. It fell flat on its face. So I'm not even going to count that. Let's see what Sean says. Well, look at riders like Cates. Marvel keeps using him and switching him to different runs, but I feel all of his storylines are subpar. All hype at the start and utter failure halfway through. I felt that way with Nick Spencer's Spider-Man run too. I was like, man, at first it was like, this is going to lead to something that's finally going to deliver, but then it didn't deliver. And it was like, he delivers on, you think he's going to deliver on one thing, and then it doesn't happen. And then he starts on another story arc, and then you think you're going to deliver, and it never went anywhere. And he branched out all these things that you thought all these multiple things were going to deliver, and none of them did. None of them did. I think Donny Cates is better than Nick Spencer, though, for sure. Only villains. Very good point. Very good point. Like Punchline, But then, I mean, even Punchline, you could say, is like, I mean, how original is that character? In context to the Batman story or the Batman, character cabinet, so to say. Let's see what Gary says here. Very difficult to come up with a great brand new character and powers. So much has been done already. I'm still amazed at how many heroes and villains Stan Lee came up with in less than 10 years. Gary, sir, you just basically inserted the beginning pieces of the argument. I want you all to understand how hard it is to create when we're talking about the superhero genre, especially. I mean, just look at storytelling in general. I mean, look at movies. Dude, movies are so unoriginal. We've seen everything. Stories in general, it's getting harder and harder for human beings to step outside of boxes to tell fresh stories. We can. People are capable of it. But let's take it back to this superhero genre. I love what Gary says here, because do you realize how many characters were created between, I'll give it to DC as well in the golden age, to anywhere from, I would say, 1961 with the birth of Fantastic Four up for the next couple of decades, the 60s and 70s, and how many superheroes were created. All right. How many superpowers can we imagine? How many origin stories can we imagine? How many ways is it possible for somebody to become a superhero? Well, they can have an accident. It could be, involve science, chemicals, electricity, chemistry, all this stuff, aliens, right? I mean, or they can be just, they can, martial arts, they can be trained militant, like the Punisher or Batman, toys, or, tech, high tech superheroes. How many times can we do this without it starting to become redundant, to where we start hitting brick walls in the capacity of what we are as human beings in this physical realm that we exist in, to say there's nothing else that we can actually constructually fathom, right? And that is the point. I'm going to take this question of how much more can we get creative with? How much more new stuff can we actually think of? We may have basically found out it's like how many, what's the word I'm looking for? How many, if you have a lock code, right? And you have 7 digits on the lock, how many combinations can you get to before you figured out every combination? How many combinations of superheroes and origin stories and how they got their powers and, what type of superhero they are, until where we run out of options mathematically. Ben Riley becoming Chasm. I don't know what I think about that one, man. Core the God Butcher was a good one. Let's see. I'm just reading through a few comments here before I'm going to continue on real quick, guys. And we'll see what you all are saying. Rehash Golden Age stories. I think there's always something else. You know what? I want to believe that too. But you can't deny the fact that it's getting harder and harder, because we are only human. We are. We got to push ourselves. We can't be lazy, and we got to push ourselves. But you can't deny the fact that so much has already been done, right? Yeah, circumstances. I mean, that's just nostalgia. That's anybody. That's like your baby boomers coming into the 80s and saying, and looking at 80s rock and saying, this isn't rock and roll or rap music. This is garbage. Or it's the great generation, or even the greatest generation were raised up on, early rock and roll. I mean, but it's like kids in the 50s that were like greasing their hair back and, listening to Chuck Berry and Elvis, and their parents saying this is devil's music. Like, we always, everything, we are so bent up on what we experienced in our youth. So we may prefer that, and that makes us biased to anything new. So, and that's different though. That's kind of like a human flaw. But when I'm talking about having valid reasons about what's going on with comic books these days, with the stories and how we're telling them, there is the issue that we came up with so much, and how do we keep making this new? And I'm going to tell you right now, and it's going to have to, a lot of you are going to have to step outside of those comfort zones, step outside of those boxes, and saying, well, when I was a kid, we had, why can't they do that now? Or this, that, and this. I mean, we can't repeat the same stories. People that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s that grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, reading those books, what do you want them to just carbon copy those books? No. You don't want new characters being carbon copied either. You don't want to read the same story over and over again. And that's another point to two things that need to happen. And I talked about this. This is one thing. This isn't the biggest thing of what's going to save comics, but this is one. One thing that I do believe publishers need to do with some of their legacy characters, they need to age them. They need to age them, because for me, and this pairs with continuity and being able to follow continuity. I've been reading Spider-Man comics since the 80s, but I've read every single Spider-Man comic basically ever written, except for some of the newer runs, like the side runs. And I have grown up following Peter Parker's journey from when he was a teenager in high school and up until the 2000s. Characters in Marvel Comics aged about 1 year for every 3 years. Pay attention to it. It's accurate. But when we started going into the 2000s, they started slowing down the aging process. And then for Peter Parker, he just stopped aging. And I think they even kind of pulled him back a little bit. Peter Parker was basically around 30 years old in the mid-2000s. And now they're putting more focus on him being a young man, which means that I think they're trying to make him more in his kind of mid to late 20s again. I'm sorry. As somebody who's been reading comic books and Peter Parker stories for so long, I get it. You don't ever want your characters to age out, but look, they got all these options now with multiverses, or I mean, they could de-age the character 30 years from now. I don't care. They need to age the characters. I want to follow this character through their life. And I don't want them to necessarily age at the same rate as me, but you got to age them. I want to know what Peter Parker and Mary Jane and Black Cat are doing in their 30s now. I want to know this. It allows you to actually continue to make these characters more realistic and more relatable. Ugly Ewok, what's going on? Figure Drum, what's going on? But then some of you might say, well, Chris, how are you going to age out these legacy characters? And then, maybe us older heads might like that. But what about the younger generation? Kids don't even read comics anymore. Now you want to make Spider-Man old and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You can't have your cake and eat it too. So you kill two birds with one stone. And for all those, and believe me, I'm an animal lover, and for all those that think that that's offensive, you pet two birds with one hand. I'm just being funny, guys. And this is what's going to save comic books, guys. This is what's going to save comic books. Mantles. And us old heads can't get offended by mantles. What do I mean by that? If you are a Peter Parker fan, if you are a Steve Rogers Captain America fan, if you are a Tony Stark Iron Man fan, let these characters age and let these characters still be relatable to the people that have followed them for decades. And use the mantles to bring in younger generations. And that's why Miles Morales is a success. And that's why Miles Morales is the future. And that's why Miles Morales is the perfect example of what can save comic books. But the first thing that us older heads have to do is not get offended and say, oh, Miles Morales isn't my Spider-Man. He doesn't need to be your Spider-Man, because Peter Parker isn't going anywhere and he will always be your Spider-Man. And if you let the publishers and the editors and the writers say, look, we can take Peter Parker and actually make him a character that still is relatable to the readership that grew up with him. And the publishers could be okay letting that happen by using mantles. Because guys, if you've ever read any comic book or even watched the Spider-Verse films about Miles Morales, Miles Morales is not a carbon copy of Spider-Man. Now, don't get me wrong. There's always going to be elements. And the one element that I think that they could get even more creative in the future years with Miles is fresh villains. Fresh villains, and not just, Miles, Peter has a rhino, Miles has a rhino, Peter has a goblin, Miles has a goblin. They can, get fresher in that aspect. But Miles Morales, what makes, and this goes back to Stan Lee's mission, what made the Marvel Age so successful? In a time when the freaking Comics Code Authority was cracking down, trying to make comic books vanilla, what did Stan Lee do that DC wasn't really able to do? He made characters that were relatable. They were just like us. They weren't aliens or rich detectives that, yeah, maybe it was fun seeing these larger than life alien superhuman characters, or a billionaire that puts on a mask and solves crime. It was different for the time. It was fresh and it was fun. But what made Marvel superheroes so amazing and so popular to this day is how relatable they were, how down to earth and grounded they were, and how flawed they were. It wasn't necessarily the mask or the superpower. It was the individual behind the mask. It was the complexities of those individuals. Let somebody else use a mantle that still tells a unique story that is individual to that human being behind the mask. And that's what Miles has done. And in all honesty, although I've never been a huge fan of Kamala Khan, that's what Kamala Khan has done. Kamala Khan has gone through her own individual struggles from the stories that I am aware of that makes her a unique character, even down to her cultural background, which I think is good because, first off, it tends to a broader global market of readership, but it shows that people are different and superheroes can come from anywhere in life, and they all don't just live in New York. This is what's going to save comic books. Mantles. And hear me out on this, guys. If we allow, or, it's not even us allowing, because it's like fans, especially in the age of social media, where, especially when we have these YouTubers that like sensationalize everything's negative, and, everything that anybody does in comic books is negative, except for them, of course, because they know it's clickbait and people watch it and they get riled up. It's not even about us allowing them, but if we as consumers can allow ourselves to put a little faith in the publishers to do these things, I think it'll pick up, and they'll pick on, or they'll grab onto these concepts more and more. I challenge anybody that is said Miles isn't my Spider-Man, or Riri isn't my Iron Man. At least read the story. Read a couple of their books. And I'm not saying to read it to like it for yourself, but at least going in with an open mind and saying, okay, this at least seems different. It's a different human being under the mask, under the armor. They go through their own experiences and they face their own trials and tribulations. Because if you could do that, then you as a collector and a consumer of comic books have an understanding to where what you want isn't at the expense of something else. You can now demand, I still want my Tony Stark. Because these people can have their Riri. I could still have my Peter, and these people could still have their Miles. And I think Jay still was going on. And I think what needs to happen with the publishers is they need to understand their readership. And that, I mean, look at how many books they're pushing out every month, every week. Stop trying to think that like everybody reads the same comic book. And I'm not saying they do that all the time. But I would love to see Marvel age Peter and continue the focus on Miles like they've been doing. This goes with other characters as well. Like, and I know Superman's kind of different because the age is different, but I mean, you have Jonathan Kent. How do we really separate these characters? And you can really use the mantle to speak to both generations, the young and the old. I'm going to read some comments here. Well, figure drawn, I mean, now withering away and dying is, I wasn't even going there, man. But I mean, look at Tony Stark. Tony Stark was already older. You know, look at Batman Beyond. Look at the Renew Your, who read the Renew Your Vows runs? I love the Renew Your Vows runs. Actually, now that I think of it, that was so fun for me because it gave, even though it was like a different universe, it showed me, like, if you read Spider-Man all up until the early 2000s, that run showed me, that title showed me what would have happened if it would have went the way that I thought it was going. And that's why I enjoyed it. They can at least try to take the superheroes out of their element, like taking Spider-Man out of New York for some odd reason and put him in Chicago or San Fran. Okay, Sean, this is a good idea, but I'm going to tell you something. Who remembers when Peter Parker moved to Portland? It was horrible. It was horrible. I will say it was the late 90s, so maybe that had to do with it. Remember when some of the X-Men were staying in San Francisco as well, when they were teaming up with Carol Danvers? I think that was like the early 80s. That wasn't horrible. It's an option. I like that. Absolutely. This is Raising L talking about what Stan Lee was able to do and how creative he was able to get with these characters and to make them relatable. Yep. Come on, man. At least like in your 30s. They ain't old yet. Come on, man. Come on now. They put Daredevil in SF. It was terrible. .360 really likes Kamala. Let's see what Serge has to say. Stan Lee got everybody involved, including the readers. We might need to do that a lot more and start writing letters to Marvel, DC Comics, how we feel. And that way everything goes through in process. I do think there is, I mean, ultimately, there's a few things going on. There's a few things going on that kind of are even deeper than what I've talked about already. I do believe the big two have a hard time understanding its readership. They don't have a hard time understanding like people that like to collect variants and speculate and all these things, like, and that's fine. And it should always be there. There should always be room for that. Let that money flow in. But it shouldn't come at the expense of stories. I don't think it is coming at the expense of stories, to be quite honest. I don't think that Marvel releasing foil variants now again, or 40 variants to another number one. I don't think this is at the expense of good storytelling. I just think the good storytelling is an issue in and of itself. Now, I want to make this very clear. The most of the people that say, "Oh, there's, comics suck these days. There's not even any good stories." Those are the same people that turn around and say, "I don't even read modern comics." So, humble yourself, get off your soapbox, and go read a modern comic, and then come and tell me that it sucked. I don't read as many modern comics as I want, but I read enough to know that there are still good stories out there. And yes, there's more stuff that's good that isn't the superhero genre. And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think just the superhero genre is so pigeonholed. It's like the movies nowadays, superhero movies. We've done so many movies now. How do we not make it the same thing? Like if you look at what was the movie that, like, I don't know. It's just throwaway bad guy, origin story, superhero having to prove themselves, coming out on. It's just like, how do we continue to keep these things fresh? So that's why I think a lot of great stories are still there in like the mystery or the horror genres of comic books. Boom has done a lot of it. Image continues to do some good stuff. But there are still some good superhero stories. There are. So I think, though, the complexity of understanding the readership, you got, and also, this is another thing that comes into play about saving comics. There is an issue. You got to understand the issue of evolution, not just in technology, because I'm not talking about like, oh, well, digital comic books are taking over. Because the last time I looked, which was, I think it's definitely been over a year now since I looked, but the digital market has remained about 10% of the market for 11 plus 12 years. So to say, since 2011. I'm not even talking about technology in terms of a digital market. I'm just talking about the evolution of readership and how they consume comic books. The floppy is becoming more and more expensive to make as well. It's getting more and more expensive to manufacture and produce floppy comics next to trade paperbacks, mangas, even like hardcover books like Dogman, etc. When you get younger kids wanting to dive into the comic book genre, and they're taking more to these, Captain Underpants and Dogman books. They're more of in a trade or a book format rather than going to a comic book store and buying a floppy comic book. It's just because, for one, it's more accessible, right? You don't see, like, when you look at brick and mortars and when you look at the evolution of e-commerce, like with Amazon, etc. You could go to Amazon and buy a brand new or used Dogman book. You can even buy, like, what do they have for Star Wars? They have like the Princess or Jedi Academy books. Those are real cool. I love them. They're in like a trade paperback form. A lot of them have the comic book bubbles, and it's very comic book genre-ish. Even manga books. You can go on Amazon and buy these books. You could see, and there are still bookstores. There are still Barnes and Nobles out there. There are still magazine racks. Target still sells Dogman books and Jedi Academy, etc., etc. This is more accessible. You got multiple Targets and Walmarts and even Barnes and Noble still in every town across the country. You got Amazon at the fingertips of every smartphone and computer. So the floppy comic book isn't accessible like the way it was. And even trade paperbacks for comic book, for the superhero genre, has been increasing, because I could go on Amazon right now. I could go to Barnes and Noble. I could go to Target. Even Target, they sell Marvel and DC trade paperbacks. the floppy it's harder to obtain on a primary market. You have to have a comic book shop, or you got to go directly through an online comic book dealer like My Comic Shop or Midtown Comics, which are some of the biggest. Or you could get smaller ones like I work with PopCultureZone.com, who doesn't even house everything. I mean, they specialize in like incentive variants, so things from another world, things like that. And these aren't mainstream anymore. So you can't even blame the stories on why the primary floppy market right now is possibly hurting in the way that it is. And it's essentially nobody's fault other than how commerce has evolved. But what do you do about that? What do you do about that? And I remember, what was it, a couple years back now, and I think it was it DC or Marvel? Somebody remind me in the comments. I think it was DC. They were going to only release certain titles via trade paperback and digital. They weren't going to go floppy. Because if you think about it, again, it's a cheaper production, manufacturing cost, and you are able to distribute the trade paperback to more chains. Now, I don't mean chains like chain stores, but more supply chains. Because you can sell the trade paperback on the primary market, like I said, on Amazon and on online retailers and to your LCSs and to Targets and to Walmarts and to Barnes and Nobles. So now I'm kind of getting away from what they need to do with the heart of the stories and the books themselves, but we're looking at just an evolution that people my age and older aren't going to want to hear. But it's just the reality of the matter, the fact of the matter. Does that not mean, though, that we can't get back to trying to hire writers and editors that can really speak to the audience, and we can bring even people our age? Because believe me, like, I do believe that Marvel and DC can grow readership of 30 and plus. And I'm going to say this separately, under 30. And I think they can do that by understanding that they can market certain characters and stories at the same time to both of these populations, to both of these consumer groups. I think it's working too with, understanding that you have these properties, that you have all these other ways that we can consume these characters, like animated films, live action films, TV shows, video games, etc. And where Sony has thrived is pushing a character like Miles and pushing his stories out there to get people to want to go back to the comic books. So there's a lot of elements involved here, folks. But I think, I really do believe, maybe it's not just aging. That was just one example. And when I meant aging, I don't mean old and wrinkled. I think that it would actually serve Marvel and DC justice by sitting down and saying, okay, we have an older demographic that wants to keep reading new comic books that are kind of lost on these current stories. And they want their characters. Their characters are the ones that they grew up with. Maybe a lot of them don't want these new characters, and it's fine. So how do we make those legacy characters fresh for them? And then you have this younger generation. How do we make them fresh for the younger generation? And I'm sorry, but this is just a fact of the matter. It is very hard to make new characters that are completely new, including a new mantle, with new powers, new looking suit, whatever, that could be successful. So why do they use mantles? Because mantles sell. Because when you look at a younger generation looking at Miles Morales, You hook them in on the mantle. They get hooked on the mantle, but they stay. They stay because of the man behind the mask, because of Miles Morales. And that is what's made him so successful. Riri, you can hook him. You can drive that hook in by calling it Iron Man armor. But you keep him by that character that's named Riri. And I really believe they need to. This is another thing that needs to happen. We do need to diversify the writers and the artists. And not just for diversity purposes. It's not like a diversity hire. But if you got black characters, try to get black creators that can actually relate real life experience to these characters. And it doesn't even always have to be about race. If you have a Muslim character, have a Muslim involved. And it doesn't even have to, it could be a team. Like Brian Michael Bendis created Miles. But over the years, Brian Michael Bendis has worked with African American and Afro Latino individuals on Miles to really flesh out his background. I mean, like I said, it doesn't even have to be about race. Like for Captain America, for Steve Rogers, get somebody that comes from like maybe a military family. If you're, and not that Captain America's military, that's kind of just a cliche because of his name and what he represents. Because oftentimes Captain America is very anti-government. He stands up against his government when he feels his government is abusing powers, et cetera, et cetera. But we need people to bring in relatable stories that they can really be authentic with. And that's the whole thing, authenticity behind these characters. And that's what Stan Lee did so well and that we need again. And I think if we're authentic to the characters and we bring it back to understanding what these characters are, but not stagnating them, but allowing them to move forward and grow and maybe even age a little bit, I think that's going to help tremendously. All right, let's look at some comments here. This is a good point, Vinny. Sometimes it can't be too relatable. You still want to be like a Batman or Superman. And yeah, I mean, I don't see that this is a problem. I just think that you need that diversity. Because, I mean, look, I mean, you still have, cosmic beings with Marvel and, Thor is a god. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think you need diversity in that sense. Let's see what Figure Drawing has to say. Comics shouldn't be treated like novels where there is a formulaic beginning, middle, and end. Comics represent ideal bodies, ideal ages, ideal time periods. It's fantasy, it's mythology, it's escapism. I agree with what you're saying, but I'm going to tweak your words a little bit here, Figure Drawing. What should be treated like the novel is the story arc. And that's what makes comics so great. And that's what makes us be able to market them as trade paperbacks as well. I agree 100% with what you're saying. These characters move throughout periods. And they can continue to tell those stories. Jacob, what's going on? Oh, it's Plagueis. Appreciate you, Jacob. And then the story arcs, though, can be those novels that we can have a beginning, middle, and end. But the complexities of those characters and the saga, the mythology of those characters, the mythos, continues on through generations. And I do believe that. But where is the mythology in the fantasy when there's nothing there, when there's no substance there anymore, or we lack, or we forget what rooted the character in the first place. So that you got to fine tune that. And I'm not saying all these characters aren't that, they've lost them all. And I'm not saying that, but I definitely think there's a good amount of fine tuning that can be done. Yep. Ugly Ewok. And look, and if you want to bring readership in, like, tell the story in the future. Let it be a different universe. I mean, Ultimate Comics did that at a time period when, Marvel was about to file bankruptcy, and, anybody thinking that comics were worth speculating on was like, oh, nothing, comic books were in a horrible state. And then the Ultimate Universe really brought readers back in. They did an amazing job with the Ultimate storylines. And you didn't give up Peter Parker, Amazing Spider-Man in, the 616 universe, whatever. He was still there. So if you want to attract a certain viewership or readership, tell a side story. DC has done this with Batman quite often through the years, and it's worked. It's worked. Craig D, what's funny is, again, I'm not an Angels fan. This was a gift, and I just like to match my wardrobes. But hey man, if anybody wants to send me an Astros hat, I'll rock it. I'll rock with Dusty. I think Silver Sable is a solid character, Serge. I do. Let's see what we got. Fat Dad. What's Fat Dad saying? In the case of the sales, the medium may be too old, archaic even, although literature seems to be doing okay, manga too. In the case of content, are the old dogs just not feeling the stories? This is, okay, I'm going to take it from the last thing you said, Fat Dad. Are the old dogs not just feeling the stories? For the most part, a large majority are the old dogs not giving them the time of day. And that's the thing that pisses me off. Yes, some of the stories are like, what are they doing? But look, guys, there's, not every story has been great. Not all the art has been great through any decade, through any era. But the same people that say comic books these days are trash are the same people that refuse to pick up a copy off of the new release shelf and actually read it. But I will say one thing that's going on, and this has to do with money. This has to do with revenue. They milk it so much, like, especially with Spider-Man. I am so tired of being able to read a new comic book. I mean, already we have shorter books than before. They keep shortening them down. What are they, 19 pages now? I don't know. I'm tired of one whole page having like 3 word bubbles. That's it. And you can read a book. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't need to sit there and read like a book from the 60s where, like, there's so many word bubbles and he's like, yeah, and next I'm going to hit you with my plasma beam. I don't need you to tell me everything that you're doing next. But we need more story. And that's the thing. It's like, I'm spending $3.99, $4.99 a comic, and it takes me 8 books to just go through 2 days of Peter Parker's life. That's the problem. But I do believe a lot of the old dogs simply just don't give it the time of day, and they jump to conclusions, and it's just rhetoric. They watch YouTube videos that know they can get clicks and views off of sensationalizing, oh, there's agendas, and we're not talking about agendas. That's not what I mean to do here, because look, at the end of the day, Everyone has an agenda. But these people refuse to read. And I say these people, I just mean a good portion of them. Not everyone. I'm not generalizing. There's a lot of people out there that simply just won't pick up a new book, but they want to sit there and have an opinion on it as if they know when they don't. There are some old dogs like me, though, that read some of the stories and it's like, what are they doing with this character that I love so much? There is some of that out there. Now, in terms of literature doing okay, yeah. And that's the thing. First off, kids are still reading comic books, but they're just not reading floppies as much. And yeah, and they're not just reading the superhero genre. They are reading other things because these other things are tending to what they are enjoying, what they're able to enjoy. And part of that has to be with access, and that goes to the medium. How are kids having access to these books? You got to understand that there's a lot of casual superhero fans. I mean, especially these days, there's people that probably never owned a comic book in their life, but they might consider themselves to be a casual superhero fan. Maybe they own Spider-Man bed sheets. Maybe they watch all the movies. Maybe they have a Spider-Man or a Superman stuffed doll. Who knows? But even these people aren't bringing their children into the comic book stores. But they are bringing them to Target and Barnes and Nobles and shopping on Amazon and letting them pick up that new Dogman or Captain Underpants book or, Jedi Academy or even some of this, like I remember when it was the Marvel superhero, oh my God, what was it? They had the whole minifigure line and they even had the video game and they had the books. They had the books that were sold at Walmart and Target and Barnes and Nobles, etc. And they were like in comic book form. You bring your kid to the grocery store, to Target, whatever, and they're, oh, look, there's these cute little drawings of, a Spider-Man and Captain America. I forget what the name of it, what they were called, but obviously it was marketed for really young kids. So that's definitely something to ponder outside of actually what can we do with these characters? How can we create fresh characters and use the mantles to bring people in and still keep it fresh? That's definitely going to change things and bring more readership in. But you got to get back to the medium and the access. How do we access floppy comics these days? It's getting harder and harder. Old Man Peter, they did Old Man Logan, they did Old Man Quill, they did Old Man Hawkeye. Why not do an Old Man Peter? I know a lot of Wolverine fans loved Old Man Logan. It could be a future timeline. It could be a multiverse. Do it. Bring in that readership. Yeah, Tony says, I really like Old Man Logan. Publishers need to hook up with Scholastic and get Rob. Man, Fat Dad, look. I'm telling you, man, if Marvel, and look, there can be a hybrid. There can be a hybrid. Now, Marvel already does stuff with Scholastic. They do. And that's how you get the superhero genre to these kids. And I work at a school. I know what's in the Scholastic books, order forms. But wouldn't there be a great way to actually evolve the floppy comic to maybe some type of hybrid floppy? I look at it as like what Random House used to do in the 80s. And they used to add the cassette tapes. And they were still floppies. They would do collections. My first ever comic book was the volume 1 3-issue Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures from Archie. But it was the collection that was in the Alpha Beta grocery store that came with the read-along cassette tape. Can you imagine doing a read-along QR code with a hybrid floppy that's sold at your grocery stores, in your Targets and stuff? Just a thought. Yeah, I don't know about what the artists are paid, but I can imagine, man. I mean, every industry right now can be grueling. Nobody getting what they deserve. Nuckin, what's going on? Floppy disk. Dan, what's going on, Dan? Hypothetically, let's say that Batman was set to age out and die. What time frame would you set forth? Okay, let me go back to what I was saying earlier. Since the incarnation of the legacy characters, we're going to look at Marvel. The characters on average aged 1 year for every 3 years. That means it took 30 years for Peter to hit 25 years old, because he was 15 when he started. 1962. So technically, in 1992, Peter should have been about 25 years old, roughly. And we already know that because, I mean, he was already going to college in the 80s. And that would mean by now, 21 years later, he would be 32 years old. Okay? That means I would be dead. Even if I lived another 40 years. Let's just say 40 years. Okay? If you aged him by 3 years for another 40 years, do you know how old he would be? Because remember, 30 years is just 10. He would be about 48 years old. So even if we get to, I would be like 80 years old. And if they aged Peter the same way, starting right now, he would still only be 48 years old. So this idea that we can't age characters just doesn't make sense, because they could keep aging these characters for another 40 years and they would still be younger than most of us by the time we were freaking 80, 90, and 100 years old. And then, you know what? If you want to keep continuity, a blip type thing happens where, oh, they're de-aged by another 15 years or something. Or, like we were just talking about, create side stories in multiverses. I mean, we have it there. Create an old man Peter. You want to keep main universe Peter young? Fine. Create another storyline. Old man Peter. People will read it. Look at Old Man Logan. Justin, thank you so much for the super chat. If you're not following Journos, what are you even doing? You can get so much from this kind of content. As always, I appreciate you, man. And your book is in the mail, on its way to you. Hopefully it should be there by Saturday. Thanks, Gary, man. Yeah, I need to get back to having roundtable discussions, Gary. I do. I need to be back to having guests on. I like to have 2 people on with me. I like that dynamic, at least the 3 people dynamic. I think it goes well. All right, let's see. What else we got? Great chat today, guys. Thank you for, you guys are chatting it up between each other and adding great input. Miles print comic series was canceled and restarted how many times? All right. Ugly Ewok, what are you implying? I would like to ask you that. What are you implying by this? And I'm not saying that like as a threat. Well, what are you? I honestly want to know, what are you implying? Like, what do you mean by this? Because I'm going to tell you why Miles was restarted many times. Okay. You can't single out Miles because I don't know. And look, I don't know what your intent is here, Ugly Ewok, but I've heard people say this before. Nobody wants Miles because he's a ripoff of Spider-Man. It's tokenism, which is, I'm not even getting into that. It's a freaking joke. Or it's pandering, all these stupid buzzwords that just, it's ridiculous. And they'll use this argument. Well, how many times has it been canceled and restarted? How many times has Peter Parker Spider-Man been canceled and restarted? Over the last 11 years. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times Amazing Spider-Man has been restarted over the last 11 years. And that's not even talking about his other titles. How many times has Batman been restarted? DC hasn't been as bad. 1, 2, 3. 3 times. How many times has Iron Man been restarted? More than Spider-Man. And why do they do that? Because of a couple things. One, because they want the hype of the number ones. Go look at how much money number ones bring in publishers. Go look at the sales, the diamond sales of number one issues. That's why they do it. It's a money scheme. They don't care about legacy numbering. I mean, they do now because they know a good portion of their readership wants the legacy number. But just because they put the legacy number under the new number and they keep doing number one, people are still going to flock to that number one. That's the main reason why they do it. And also because I think, yes, over the last decade or so, Marvel and DC has struggled to find solid writers that can really deliver on these legacy characters. Not only legacy, but other newer characters as well. Chris Claremont not only made the X-Men relatable, but he also did a lot of out there crap with the X-Men too. You know, he made the X-Men, have these incredible, interesting cosmic journeys, but he also grounded them and brought, the politics of it all in as well. Goonish, I am not reading Local Man by Image. I haven't read much this last year just because of personal things, but I just started picking up my Spider-Man again. But I got to start. I have so much that I want to read. It's unbelievable. You spoke earlier about that one moment that made these characters a hero. Chemical, tech, aliens. I think it takes several moments not only make, but also mold and shape the hero. And then again, that goes to the mantle versus the hero under the mask. Agree. 100%. It's what's under the mask. It's those experiences that shape the character. Swag. What's going on, man? Having now gone through comic printing, I got to say the materials Marvel and DC use are not up to snuff. I think the products they make feel cheap for them. I agree. And it's like, it's a tough thing here with looking at quality versus quantity. And this is what I think DC was trying to do with Future State. But I just don't think this is DC. They did the card stock, they limited the titles. But this is what I think needs to happen before they do that. I think DC was onto the right thing. They were onto something. Limit the titles, good stories, good art, quality paper. But before they do that, because that's going to cost them even more money, cost of printing and manufacturing keeps going up, and materials. So let's let Marvel and DC use the materials, the cheaper materials that they're having right now, and keep the price point down. Which, keeping it down, what does that even mean? Because it's already just, yeah. But keep it that way for at least the next couple of years, and really try to get to more of these stories through story arc building, I believe, as well, to try to start bringing readers in. Once they do that, I think they'll have a better opportunity at going to a higher quality product and even raising the price that they have to because of the higher costs. But I hear you, Swag. Aggressively relaxing, I did once, and actually it made me not buy it, and I wish I did. It was Spider-Punk #1, because remember, but that was like the cover was like an inside page, and it was just so ripply and wavy. I'm like, this is Marvels do feel a bit cheaper than DC, absolutely. Lee Naren, what's going on, Lee? Thanks for hanging out. Sky, he would be 76. Who are we talking about? Movie fan, what's going on? All right, guys, this is what we're gonna do. I appreciate you guys so much. A lot of good talk. We got some questions to get to, okay? And this is how I'm gonna do this. So for my Patreon members, and I know some of you are here right now, I didn't get too many questions over the last couple months, but I'm going to split it in two. All right. So we got one set because I did two different posts in Patreon. Now I'm going to do one post today, and then we're going to do another post tomorrow. So I think I got 4 questions to answer tonight, guys, before we end the show. Okay. Missing link. What's going on? Jason. All right, guys, here we go. Let's get to some questions. We're going to end the show off with some Patreon member Q&A. And I know Justin is here right now. All right, Justin. Got a question if it's not too late to submit. In your opinion, do you believe that CGC grades modern books more strictly than they do the economy books? Justin, great answer, great question. Do I think that CGC grades modern books more strictly than the economy tier, or what do they call it now? Yeah. No, I don't. No, I don't, because I have a modern book that's probably no better than an 8.5 that they gave me a 9.8 on. That's my answer. But yeah, I know. Overall, though, I do believe when looking at it, and I don't really believe in this myself, but I've come to learn, like, I do believe in, let's just say, in a 9.0 book from 2008 might be different than a 9.0 book from 1962. I think that 9.0 book from 1962 might have a bit more defects. Now, as a grader myself, I've been realizing how that can come into play and how we might be able to see that, but I still don't really believe in it. I don't. Unless it has to do with paper quality and looking at how the defects affect the book based on the paper quality, because the paper quality is different between the Golden Age, Silver Age, and modern books. But other than that, a 9.0 was a 9.0 was a 9.0. A 9.8 is a 9.8 is a 9.8. That's what I believe. And I don't think there should be any like, oh, well, a 9.8 Silver Age can have more. And it's not what's even stated. So unless it has to do with paper quality, I personally don't think so. But outside of their inconsistencies, Justin, I do think that there could be different types of defects on older books than there are for modern books. All right, another question from Justin. Father to father, how proud were you to see your son walk across that stage at graduation? We got a while before I'll get there, before Eli will get there, but just watching him learn how to walk, it's a new feeling, one of pride and excitement. Congrats to your son on his achievement. Justin, I'm going to get emotional just talking about this, but I just saw a little video clip that I had in a memory, because on your drive, you get memories of my son in his little like swing, his little seat swing when he was a baby, maybe about, 1 year old, not even a year old. And he's turning 18 in 3 weeks. He's out. He's got his own car. He's out driving around. I just can't believe it, but beyond proud. And my son, who suffers from certain disabilities and learning disabilities, for him to push through school the way he did, he's already signed up for junior college for the fall. I'm beyond proud of him. He is an old, wise soul beyond his years, and he has so much to give to this world, and I can't wait to see what he does. Absolutely. All right, Justin asks, do you think Daredevil will be bigger than Spider-Man in the MCU? No. No. Absolutely not. That's all I got to say, Justin. No, absolutely not. I could elaborate on that, but Spider-Man. I just, yeah. We'll have to talk about that one. Pedro! Hello, Chris. Been far too long since I had a question for you. I recently have gone back to a local comic store here in Kissimmee, Florida, that has expanded and grown so much since the 90s. However, they have adopted a practice of overcharging for key books, and I have questioned their staff as to why. Basically, they explain the owner is sitting on the fact that they are still a brick and mortar business that does less online than in store. I believe they expanded too much and now determine fair market value on key books to be at the high end of sales. Do you think it is smart for any comic book store to price books based on their company's expenses? Absolutely freaking not. Period. It's the most stupidest thing I've ever heard. Now, here's one thing. Look, if you got a key book, right? Especially if it's a big key book that's like Silver Age and you don't get many on the market. Maybe the last one in that grade sold for $4,000. And maybe that was a record high. But you think because there's so little out there that you could price your book at $4,800. Go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that, because fair market value is not an exact science. And if it's like an Amazing Spider-Man, number freaking, I don't know, 14, first appearance of Green Goblin, and the last one in that grade sold for 4 G's, and you want to price yours for $4,800, and maybe you think yours is a little better, displays, or the appearance is a little better. Whatever, price it what it is. But to sit there and say that we're a brick and mortar, so I need to price this above fair market value or what, like, look, here's the thing though, Pedro, they can do whatever the hell they want to do. But do I think it's smart? No. Why? They will be out of business before you know it. unless they got money to sit on, unless they got some other type of money and they could pay their rent from somewhere else. They're not going to be paying their rent. Why do you got once again, we're not, I mean, it's like, would you go? What's an example I can explain? Comic books are driven by supply and demand, or at least they should be. We pay what we think the book is worth. And if we can walk into a comic book store and pull up our phone and go on eBay and buy a book for cheaper, I'm going to do that. And if I go into that store and I see a book and I'm like, man, like, that's extremely overpriced. Let me look at eBay. Yeah, I could get that same grade right now for $80 cheaper. And you go up and tell them, excuse me, like, there's a buy it now right now that even with shipping is $80 cheaper than the same book that you're selling in the same grade. And he says, well, I don't sell on eBay. I don't sell online. I'm a brick and mortar. I'm like, all right, buy now. Boom. All right. Peace to you. Good luck. I got my copy. I'm out. Who does that? Who does that? Another thing is holding a book for future value. But I wouldn't even mark it and put it on the floor necessarily. You could do that. Like, look, I got my Nova number 1. If my Nova number 1 in a 9.0 is selling for $120 right now, right? I would price it for $200. But I wouldn't though, because I'm going to hold it. Because it's silly for me to price it and try to sell it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it. And when we get an announcement or a casting for Nova, then I'm going to price it for fair market value at that time, and then I'm going to sell it. Ain't nothing wrong with holding your books because you think there's a future value that's going to be more. But if you don't want to sell your inventory, you go ahead and price your books at whatever you want. It's just like that video that I just did the other day. This woman that has a liquidation store, and she looks like she somehow got her hands on a small box of comics. Some of them, even in high grade, might sell for $3, $4, and hers are all beat up, not even in bags and boards. And she's pricing $2, $3 books for $80. And I'm telling her, hey, look, like, this is fair market value. Here's some screenshots. Like, I want to work with you if you want to, like, sell me them. But she's like, nope, I'm good. All right, go ahead. I'm going to come back to you in 6 months. And I guarantee you those comic books are still going to be there. I'm going to come back to you in a year. And I guarantee you those comic books are still going to be there. Ain't nobody going to buy those books. The only people that overpay for books, all right, are people that are uninformed, or maybe unless it's a FOMO speculation thing. If you're casually going into a comic book store, you are, to some extent, a comic book collector already. And to some extent, you're going to have an idea of the comic book market, especially in this day and age, with everyone watching YouTube and have a key collector or cover price, et cetera, et cetera. There should be no reason that a comic book store is overpricing their books and using the excuse, I got bills to pay. It don't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, look at me right now. Like, what you price your books at isn't about brick and mortar or selling online. It's about being able to make a profit, understanding your cost benefit analysis in all of your purchases before you make your purchases. So for me, I know that when I buy collections, right, I'm putting money out. That money is from the business. It's a cost. It's an expense. And I don't generate revenue until I at least get that money back. If I pay $1,000 for a collection, I need to sell enough of that collection to first break even, or I take a loss. Once I break even, everything after that is revenue. And even that revenue is probably going to go back into some type of expense, right? But I don't base my pricing on my expenses. I actually base my pricing more on how fast I can not take a loss and hit zero. What I mean by that is this. I already go and price my books under current fair market value. Most of my books, unless they're a key that I think is moving on the market, I'm pricing them under fair market value. I always say this. I guarantee you, anything that I sell, go on eBay right now, go on my comic shop right now, and I guarantee you, you won't be able to find the same comic in the same grade range at my price. That's how I price my books. But do you know, when I do my claim sales, it's hard to move stuff right now. I am taking books down that I have priced at $6 to $3. And even then, I'll do like $3 each or claim two for $5. Because I know that even if I sell them at $3 or even if I sell them at 2 for $5, I'm still making profit. It does me no good if I can't sell my books at even fair market value and I am sitting here not even breaking even on my expense. It does me no good to sit and say, well, that's fair market value, so that's the price I have to sell them at. No, man, I need money now. I need to make my money back. I need to move my inventory. And like I said, it doesn't matter if I have a brick or mortar or not. I mean, quite honestly, if he has overhead, how are you paying your rent? How are you paying that overhead? Maybe he gets a sucker or two that he makes enough money on from overpricing his books every month. I don't know. Maybe it's working for him. But the majority of people that do this, it's not sustainable, and they will be out of business before you know it. Jacob, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Jason, it is evening up more to retail. And McDonald's, Comic Toby. Toxic, what's going on, man? Really? The quality of facsimiles, huh? Pop, what's going on? Yeah, overpaying is relative. And, that's one thing. It's like, that's why you pay more like, when you go into and I've talked about this before, when you go into a gas station and you pay more for that little bag of chips or even a regular bag of chips at a gas station because you don't want to go into a grocery store, you're willing to pay more for that bag of chips or the bottle of water at a baseball game. You're willing to pay 3 times the price for that bottle of water because of the convenience or the whatever serves the purpose in that moment. You're willing to pay more in that area. And it's just like the convenience. I talked about this with comic books too. It's just like the convenience of buying books online. And that's why sometimes you pay premiums even for run fillers on eBay. But yeah. We all have overpaid for a book at some point. Absolutely. I know I have. Never experienced buyer's remorse, but I've experienced seller's remorse. I've had a little buyer's remorse. I haven't really had seller's remorse yet since selling. I'm pretty happy about that. Horvath, I am into Golden Age stuff. I can't really afford it. It's not my budget, so therefore I don't have a lot of it. Zero Fire, what's going on? All right, guys, we are going to close out right there. Thank you to my patrons for asking some awesome questions. Part 2 of the Patreon questions, I'm hoping is going to be next week. So, but man, we had a good discussion, good chat today, guys. Thank you all for hanging out and participating. I appreciate you all. Thanks for, hanging out on a Thursday night. And I don't think I won't be doing a live tomorrow. Guys, I'm doing my CBEST certification to continue my path to be as an educator. Wish me luck. It's going to be tough, but that's what I'm doing tomorrow night. No live stream, but check out for more videos this weekend. Hope to see you guys on hanging out at Commonwealth Cannon on Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. But with that being said, guys, thank you all so much. Be well, be good to yourselves, be good to others. Oh, one more thing. If I don't see you guys or talk to you guys before 4th of July, hope you guys have a good 4th of July weekend. Be safe. Don't drink and drive. It ain't worth it. I know it's cliche to say, but so many people still do it. Call an Uber, call a friend, walk, take public transportation. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And if you're in the Sacramento area, I'm telling you, hit me up. Because I don't drink, hit me up. I don't say that just for the hell of it. Hit me up. All right, guys. Be safe. Be well. Until next time.